For 10 years, I thought my wife and I were drowning in debt, working double shifts to keep our heads above water. Yesterday, I found a hidden bank account with $600,000 in it, and every cent was stolen from our joint savings. My name is Sarah, or so I thought I knew her. We lived in a cramped two-bedroom apartment, drove cars with 200,000 miles, and skipped vacations for a decade. She cried every time a bill came. She told me we were broke but together. While I was eating ramen and fixing my own shoes with duct tape, she was funneling my paychecks into a private offshore account. The discovery happened by accident. A stray statement from a bank I didn't recognize arrived in our mail, addressed to her maiden name. When I confronted her, she didn't even flinch. She said it was her safety net, in case I ever decided to leave. She didn't realize that by creating the net, she ensured I'd have to use it. But I didn't scream. I didn't pack a bag. I spent the last 24 hours talking to a forensic accountant and a shark of a divorce lawyer. In my state, secret assets acquired during marriage are subject to a 50-50 split. And in cases of fraud, a judge can award the victim even more. Tomorrow morning, Sarah is going to wake up to a frozen bank account and an empty house. I've already moved my half of that safety net to a place she'll never find. If you're listening to this and you think you know your partner's finances, check the mail twice. People don't just hide money, they hide a whole different life.
My boss fired me via a group Slack message while I was at my father's funeral, calling my lack of commitment a cancer to the company. He forgot one thing. I was the only person with the encryption keys to the server, holding 3 years of unbilled client data. The company is a mid-sized logistics firm. My boss, let's call him Rick, inherited the business and thought leadership meant screaming until someone cried. When my dad passed, I asked for 3 days. Rick told me to work through the grief. I didn't. 10 minutes after the funeral service ended, my phone buzzed. I was locked out of my email, and the group chat was mocking my vacation. Rick thought he was being a shark, but he's just a fish who doesn't understand how water works. See, I built their entire database architecture from scratch. To save costs, Rick refused to pay for cloud redundancy. Everything was on a local encrypted server. 2 hours later, Rick called me. His voice wasn't screaming anymore. It was shaking. The system had auto-locked due to unusual administrative changes, and they couldn't process a single order. He demanded the keys. I told him I was on funeral leave, and my brain was too clouded to remember complex hexadecimal strings. By the next morning, the company was losing $50,000 an hour. Rick offered me my job back with a raise. I told him I'd only talk to the board of directors, not him.
Before I tell you how much I charged them to come back. The next story in this archive was deleted by Reddit admins within minutes of posting because the legal implications were too high. Stay tuned.
I didn't take the job back. I sold my services as an independent consultant. My fee? 3 years' salary, up front, and a signed NDA that prevents them from ever suing me. Rick was demoted to a desk in the basement. Sometimes, when you fire the cancer, you realize you just cut out the only organ keeping you alive.
I'm a contractor. Last month, I was hired to renovate the basement of the local sheriff's childhood home after he passed away. When I cracked open a false concrete wall in the foundation, I didn't find old pipes. I found a collection of missing persons' IDs dating back to 1985. This town is the kind of place where everyone knows your name and no one locks their doors. We've had a vanishing problem for 40 years, but the police always blamed it on drifters or the nearby interstate. I was staring at 12 different driver's licenses. All of them belonged to young men who had supposedly run away from this town over the last 4 decades. I stood there covered in concrete dust, holding the ID of my own older brother, who disappeared in '92. My heart didn't just break, it stopped. I didn't call the local station. I knew half the officers were cousins of the late sheriff. Instead, I took photos of everything and drove 3 hours to the state police headquarters. By the time I got back to my motel that night, my tires were slashed and a note was tucked under my wiper. Some things are better left buried, neighbor. The state investigation is currently classified, but what they found under the garage floor.
Case number 4 is coming up, and it's the only story on this channel that actually made me lose sleep. Don't go anywhere.
They've made 3 arrests so far, including the town's current mayor. It turns out the pillar of the community had a very dark hobby, and the law was there to make sure the concrete never talked. I'm moving next week, because even with the sheriff dead, the eyes in this town haven't stopped watching me.
My grandmother lived alone in a massive Victorian house for 50 years and never let anyone into the attic. After her funeral, I found a secret room behind a wardrobe that was identical to my childhood bedroom, down to the exact toys I lost 20 years ago. I grew up thinking my grandma was just a strict, eccentric woman. She was wealthy, but lived like a recluse. When I cleared out the attic, I found the hidden door. It wasn't just a replica of my room. It was a lived-in space. There was fresh food on a plate and a notebook filled with dates and times of every single time I visited her as a child. The most terrifying part? The dates continued after I grew up. Someone had been living in that attic, watching me through the vents every time I came for Christmas. I found a crawl space that led directly behind the headboard of the guest bed where I slept. While I was calling the police, I heard a floorboard creak directly above me. Then, a voice that sounded exactly like my grandmother's, but deeper, whispered through the wall. "You weren't supposed to find the room yet, Leo." The police found a tunnel leading from the attic to the woods behind the house.
The final case in this archive will show you why you should never look into your neighbor's trash. It's the most requested story this year.
They never caught him, but the DNA in the room matched my father's, the man who supposedly died in a car accident when I was 3. He didn't die. She just kept him in the attic. And now that she's gone, he's out.
My neighbor is a 60-year-old retired dentist who mows his lawn every Saturday at 9 a.m. and brings us cookies every Christmas. Last night, his trash bag split open on the sidewalk, and I found 14 pairs of identical glasses, all belonging to the women who have gone missing in our county since 2010. Mr. Henderson was the grandfather of our street. He was the one who called the police when someone's dog got out. He was helpful. Too helpful. I was just trying to be a good neighbor by cleaning up the mess. But as I picked up the trash, I realized it wasn't just glasses. It was hair. Neatly tied bundles of hair, each tagged with a date and a name. One of the tags had my sister's name on it. She's been missing for 3 years. The police told us she probably ran away to the city. I looked up at his house, and for the first time, I noticed the windows in his basement weren't just dirty. They were painted black from the inside. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Henderson. He wasn't smiling anymore. He just said, "You should have left that for the garbage truck, son. Now we have to talk." I didn't talk. I swung the heavy trash bag at his face and ran like I've never run before. The police found a soundproof surgery suite under his flower beds. He's still in custody, but his lawyer's trying to get him out on a technicality. Every time I hear a lawnmower, I start shaking. Because Henderson always told me, a good dentist never leaves a job unfinished.